Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
In just over 4 hours, Chelsea Clinton will introduce her mother at the Democrat convention in Philadelphia. And all the speeches from Meryl Streep's opening scream to Michelle Obama's brilliantly crafted words, from Bill Clinton's folksy homage to Barack Obama's ringing endorsement, have been leading to this moment when Hillary Clinton takes the stage. The problem is, the whip-smart, dedicated, loyal, honest woman they portray is one that the voters might not see. The faithful are in the hall, but the sceptical threaten her in the country. Here's Katie Razzle.
I'm asking you to join me to reject cynicism and reject fear.
The situation is worse than it has ever been before.
Don't let anyone ever tell you that this country isn't great.
One side's talking hope. The other campaign looks based on fear of immigrants, of terrorism, of economic decline. The 2016 presidential election feels like a choice for what was traditionally a nation of optimists between two diametrically opposed narratives about their country. Hope and fear aren't new concepts in American politics. Back in 1968, Richard Nixon's campaign was set against a toxic political brew. The Vietnam War, racial tensions and the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and widespread rioting in America's cities. Nixon was the fear candidate, and his strategy worked.
As we look at America, we see cities enveloped in smoke and flame. We hear sirens in the night. We see Americans dying on distant battlefields abroad. We see Americans hating each other, fighting each other, killing each other at home.
Our convention occurs at a moment of crisis for our nation. The attacks on our police and the terrorism of our cities threaten our very way of life.
Donald Trump and his team have been clear they see 1968 and present-day America as comparable and look to Nixon's campaign for inspiration.
If you look at 1968, the Democratic president was doing terribly in public opinion polls. I think Lyndon Johnson was in the 30s or maybe even in the 20s, I don't remember, whereas Barack Obama is now around 50%. Crime was going up then. It's maybe slightly ticking up now after having gone down for several years. American troop casualties were very high in Vietnam in 1968. There's really nothing comparable to that now.
Don't get cynical, because look at yourselves and what you were...
The Nixon and Trump campaigns are a far cry from Ronald Reagan's vision of America in the 1980s.
Want it to be a shining city on a hill.
One obvious way of measuring hope or fear is consumer confidence in the economy. One rule's held fast since the 1980s. When consumer confidence is above 100 points, the incumbent party wins the popular vote. Below 100 and the challenger wins. In 2012, that rule was broken. Obama won despite economic gloom. Today, consumer confidence is at 97.
With Democrats and Republicans really disagreeing on everything, it's possible that consumer confidence may now be affected by Republicans thinking the economy is bad just because there's a Democratic president, Democrats thinking the economy is good because there's a Democratic president, and so that indicator may not mean what it used to. But it's very, very difficult to actually suss this kind of stuff out.
I still believe in a place called hope.
It's worth remembering that while Bill Clinton and Barack Obama were the most recent optimism candidates, despite the rhetoric, for many Americans right now, it's this man who's offering hope, a chance to change their fortunes.
A great border wall.
And that may be difficult to resist.
Katie Razzle. Well, joining me now from the Convention Centre are Jill Abramson, the former editor of the New York Times, now at The Guardian, and Tina Brown, the former editor of Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, and co-creator of The Daily Beast. Good evening to both of you. First of all, Tina Brown, hearing there what Katie Razzle said, the problem is that Barack Obama talks about America being great. A lot of Americans don't think America's very great for them at the moment, and they don't feel optimistic. Now, you've got to counter this idea, hasn't she, that Donald Trump is the man of hope. He's the candidate of hope.
Well, this is true. I mean, what we're seeing is very much like what we went through in the UK with Brexit. there is as much sort of psychic gloom, emotional gloom, as there is economic gloom in large swaths of America who feel left behind, who feel remaindered, left out of the big dream, and somehow left on the shelf, not considered, talked down to by the elite. Those are the people, of course, who Donald Trump is speaking to. And what we have seen is that the majority of Americans right now have said America's not on the right track. More than half of the Americans have said they want the candidate of change, and most of them feel that Hillary Clinton is not the candidate for change, and yet they also feel that Donald Trump changes may well be for the worse, which leaves us in this fascinating situation, which is everybody wants change and Trump is the change candidate. That is why, of course, every narrative last night pretty much was trying to stress that Hillary Clinton is a candidate for change. Yeah. That was the theme of Bill Clinton's song.
Well, but Jill Abramson, you know, like Tina Brown, Jill Abramson, you know Hillary Clinton, at least partly from close up and partly from a distance. And the trouble is that she does feed into this idea that she is part of the elite, and actually she's got some very tricky stuff which may well then resurface again in the next 4 months. How does she counter that?
Well, you've heard some of the rhetoric already during this week of the convention, where many speakers have labeled her the change maker. She is trying to portray herself as an agent of change, which, you're right, is quite tricky considering she has been a Washington figure for a generation, going back to when she became First Lady in 1993.
Yeah. And Jill Abramson, just to come in, Jill Abramson, just to come in on that, the recent CNN poll, when it talks about trustworthiness and honesty, 68% say Hillary Clinton isn't honest and trustworthy versus 43% on Trump. Now, that is pretty devastating at this stage of the game.
It's devastating, but I have written that based on supervising investigative stories about her at the New York Times, as an investigative reporter myself, looking into many of the Clinton controversies, I think she is basically honest and trustworthy, and that many of the charges against her, and at the Republican convention, the people who were chanting lock her up, it's extremely exaggerated. Even the most recent emails are, when you actually examine, you know, the case against her, it came down to 3 emails that didn't even have classified headers.
But Tina Brown, that's a problem.
She's hurt by that.
Isn't that the problem? She's hurt by that. But of course, she herself blames the media, doesn't she? She's very distrustful of the media. She's very hostile to the media, very defensive about the media.
With good reason. Well, actually, with good reason. I mean, Hillary Clinton has been demonized literally for decades and decades and decades by the GOP, the Republican attack machine, and by these kind of non-event pseudo-scandals, in a sense, that have bedeviled her and bedeviled her and bedeviled her. And, you know, a leading Republican person said to me last night, you know, he said, Hillary has baggage, but Trump is crazy, and you can't fix crazy. And I think that interestingly, that Michael Bloomberg last night, after all, himself a billionaire, himself, you know, the businessman candidate, really made the point that Trump is a reckless candidate. And the question is, as we go towards the election, whether the sort of petty, in a sense, untrustworthiness of Hillary Clinton in terms of people's perception is going to be as dangerous in their minds as a reckless, radical, you know, off-the-wall candidate.
Well, but then you have to accept that you think that, and a lot of people in the big cities think that, but a lot of people in great swathes of America believe that Trump is the authentic candidate. Now, I wonder what she's going to do tonight, because Tina Brown, I remember very memorably recently on radio, when you were talking about what she had to do in the campaign, you said she had to show her true self, to be stern, to release her inner bitch, you called it. Is this really the night for that?
Well, it's very interesting. I actually think you've already seen a little bit of that in the men talking about it, because both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama stressed the fighter in Hillary. It's almost as if, you know, we saw Hillary as kind of supposed to be the solid national security candidate last time. This time she's been positioned as like the cuddly grandmother. And finally, it's like everyone is saying, you know what, the truth of Hillary is she's a feisty, fierce woman who fights for change. I think it's going to be a lot more appealing, particularly to the young millennial women, particularly, who want to feel that their women are fierce, you know, are fighters. And she is really now being positioned as that, and I think it's more appealing and more authentic than anything we've heard before.
But Jill, I wonder, because what we've heard, a very well-crafted speech that was written for Michelle Obama, and of course Obama and Clinton, both orators, but she's not an orator, is she, Hillary Clinton? She's not an orator, so I wonder how she's going to deal with this.
Well, she herself has said, you know, she's not a natural politician like her husband. But in terms of her feistiness and, to use Tina's phrase, her inner bitch, we saw that, you know, at the end of the primaries, that great speech in San Diego she gave, and you could see how she relished attacking Donald Trump on important points. She is clearly ready to go out there and, you know, really get in his face, and she herself kind of delights in the fact that, as she says, she clearly gets under his skin.
But Tina Brown, I mean, in a way, what we're talking about is the night this convention finishes, the big fight starts between the pair of them, and things are going to get very dirty. And in the swing state, she's going to have to play a very careful game, isn't she?
She is, but you know, as Jill said, I mean, Hillary loves a fight. Where she's at her best is when her back is against the wall. During those 7 hours of Benghazi hearings, during that last primary campaign, and now when she's in the thick of it, I think she'll be buoyed up by all of these testimonies after being so battered. It must be very, very exciting for her to hear these wonderful testimonies from so many incredible, you know, strong, amazing figures in the Democratic Party. I think she's going to come out very, very buoyed up, and I think she's going to go put on her fighting boots.
Thank you both very much indeed for joining us tonight. Thank you.
I've been getting away with it all